An abused German shepherd was tied to a tree for days. What this baby did shocked everyone. The storm came without warning on a Tuesday night. What happened next would change the lives of one family forever. If you're about to listen to this story, be prepared. Your heart may never be the same. Rain hammered against the windows of the small cottage that sat at the edge of the woods. 5-year-old Emma sat cross-legged on the worn living room carpet, her tiny fingers stacking colorful wooden blocks into a tower that nearly reached her chin. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she carefully placed a red block on top, her tongue peeking out between her lips. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting long shadows across the walls. The thunder that followed shook the house to its foundation, and Emma's tower collapsed with a clatter. She didn't move to rebuild it. Instead, she froze, her head tilting slightly to one side. There it was again, a sound carried on the wind. Not thunder, not rain. Something else. Emma rose to her feet, abandoning her blocks. She pressed her small palms against the cold glass of the window, her breath creating a small fog circle that expanded and contracted with each exhale. The woods beyond their yard looked different at night. The trees no longer friendly giants, but twisted, gnarled things with branches like bony fingers reaching toward the house. "Mommy!" she called, her voice barely audible above the storm. "Mommy! Someone's crying outside." Olivia looked up from her laptop where she'd been answering work emails at the kitchen table. Dark circles hung beneath her eyes, evidence of too many late nights trying to keep up with her remote job while raising Emma alone since the divorce. "It's just the wind, sweetie," she said, offering a tired smile. "The storm makes all kinds of sounds." Emma shook her head, curls bouncing against her shoulders. "No, Mommy, it's not the wind. It's someone saying, 'Help me.' I can hear them." Olivia sighed, closing her laptop. Emma had always had an active imagination. Too active, her ex-husband would say. But Olivia secretly loved this about her daughter, even when it meant checking closets for monsters or leaving nightlights on in every room. "The trees make noises when their branches rub together," Olivia explained, walking over to kneel beside her daughter. "And the wind can sound like voices sometimes. Remember how we talked about that?" Another flash of lightning, another crash of thunder, and then a whimper, so faint it might have been nothing at all. But Emma's head snapped toward the sound, and this time Olivia heard it too. "See?" Emma whispered, her lower lip trembling. "Someone's out there, Mommy. They're scared." Olivia frowned, peering out into the darkness. The rain came down in sheets, making it impossible to see more than a few feet beyond the porch. The woods that bordered their property seemed to shift and move in the storm, shadows dancing between the trees. "I don't see anything, Em," but there was doubt in her voice now. "It's probably just another whimper, slightly louder this time. Definitely not the wind, not a branch. Something or someone was out there." Emma's fingertips pressed harder against the glass. "They need help," she whispered, her eyes never leaving the darkness beyond. Olivia swallowed hard. "Stay here," she said, standing up. "I'm going to check from the porch." "No," Emma grabbed her mother's hand, squeezing it tight. "Don't leave me. What if the monster gets you?" "There's no monster, baby," Olivia assured her, though uncertainty crept into her voice. She'd moved to this isolated cottage after the divorce, specifically because it was quiet, safe. The nearest neighbor was half a mile down the road. Who would be out in these woods during a storm like this? Olivia lifted her daughter into her arms, balancing her on her hip. "We'll look together, okay? Just from the porch. We won't go outside." Emma nodded, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck. In the kitchen, a pot of chicken soup simmered on the stove, filling the cottage with a comforting aroma that contrasted sharply with the unease growing in Olivia's chest. She turned down the heat with one hand, still holding Emma with the other, and grabbed her phone from the counter. Better to have it, just in case. The front door creaked as Olivia pulled it open. The covered porch offered some protection from the downpour, but the wind still drove cold droplets against their faces. Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "Hello?" Olivia called, her voice immediately swallowed by the storm. "Is anyone out there?" Nothing but the relentless patter of rain and the moaning of the wind through the trees. "See, honey? There's nobody." A flash of lightning turned night to day for a split second. And in that instant, Olivia saw it. A dark shape beneath the old oak tree at the edge of their property. Not a person. An animal. Large, huddled against the trunk. and then darkness again. "Did you see that?" Olivia whispered, more to herself than to Emma. Emma lifted her head, eyes wide. "It's under the big tree, Mommy. It's stuck. It can't get away." Olivia stared at her daughter. How could she know that? The shape had been barely visible, just a shadow really, and Emma's face had been hidden against her shoulder when the lightning flashed. "What do you mean, stuck?" Olivia asked, a chill running down her spine that had nothing to do with the rain. "The metal is hurting them," Emma said simply, as if it were obvious. "That's why they're crying." Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled to answer it while still holding Emma. "Liv? You guys okay?" It was Jake, her brother, his voice crackling with static. "Power's out all over town. News says the storm's getting worse." "Jake," Olivia said, her voice tight, "I think there's an animal trapped in our yard, by the big oak." "In this weather? What kind of animal?" "I don't know, big. A deer maybe, or," she hesitated, "a dog." "Don't go out there, Liv. Whatever it is, it's not worth risking yourself or Emma in this storm. Wait till morning." Emma squirmed in her mother's arms. "We can't wait!" she cried, loud enough for Jake to hear. "They're hurt. They need us now." "Emma, honey," Jake started, but Olivia cut him off. "I'm going to check, just to see. I'll call you right back." "Liv, don't." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Emma was looking at her with those big eyes, filled with a certainty Olivia couldn't understand. "We need to help them," Emma repeated, softer this time. Olivia looked out at the raging storm, then back at her daughter. Every instinct told her to close the door, lock it tight, and wait for morning. But something in Emma's eyes, something old and knowing that didn't belong in a 5-year-old's face, made her hesitate. "Okay," she finally said, "but you stay here on the porch. I'm just going to look." She set Emma down and grabbed the large flashlight from the hook by the door. "Stay right here. Promise me." "I promise," Emma said, but her fingers were already working at the laces of her rain boots that sat by the door. Olivia stepped off the porch, immediately sinking ankle-deep in mud. The rain plastered her hair to her head, soaking through her sweater in seconds. She raised the flashlight, its beam barely cutting through the downpour. She moved cautiously across the yard, each step a struggle against the mud that seemed determined to keep her boots. The wind pushed against her as if trying to force her back to the safety of the cottage. 20 steps. 30. The old oak tree slowly materialized from the darkness. And then the flashlight beam caught it. A dog. A German shepherd. Massive even as it cowered against the base of the tree. A heavy chain wrapped around its neck, secured to the trunk with a padlock. The dog's fur was matted, ribs visible through its sides. It raised its head as Olivia approached, ears flattened against its skull, eyes reflecting the flashlight beam. "Oh my God," Olivia breathed. The dog made no move to stand, no attempt to bark or growl. It simply watched her, eyes filled with a resignation that broke Olivia's heart. How long had it been here? Days, by the look of it. And then she saw the second dog, smaller, huddled behind the first, another German shepherd, this one with a swollen belly that could only mean one thing: pregnant, and close to term. A small voice came from behind her, nearly lost in the storm. "I told you they needed help." Olivia spun around. Emma stood there in her raincoat and boots, already soaked to the skin, her favorite stuffed bear clutched under one arm. "Emma, I told you to stay on the porch." "They're scared," Emma said, ignoring the reprimand. "The big one is Max. The mommy is Luna. She's going to have babies soon." Olivia stared at her daughter. "How do you—" She shook her head. "Never mind. We need to get you back inside. We can't leave them, Mommy." Emma took a step toward the dogs, and to Olivia's astonishment, the larger dog, Max, whined softly, straining against the chain to reach her daughter. "Emma, stop! It might be dangerous." But Emma was already kneeling in the mud beside the dogs, her small hand resting on Max's head. The massive animal closed its eyes, leaning into her touch. "He won't hurt me," Emma said with absolute certainty. "He just wants to go home, with us." Olivia stood frozen, the rain beating down on her shoulders, watching her 5-year-old daughter calmly stroke the head of a chained, abused dog that should, by all logic, be wild with fear or aggression. "We need to call animal control," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice level. "Or the police. someone who can help them properly. Emma looked up, rain streaming down her face. "There's no time, Mommy. Luna's babies are coming soon. Tonight." As if to confirm her words, the pregnant dog let out a low moan, shifting uncomfortably on the cold, wet ground. "How do you know these things?" Olivia whispered, but her question was lost as headlights suddenly swept across the yard. A car was coming up their long driveway, tires splashing through puddles. Relief flooded through Olivia. Jake, it had to be. He'd decided to check on them despite the storm. The SUV came to a stop near the porch, its headlights illuminating the scene by the oak tree. But when the driver's door opened, it wasn't Jake who stepped out. It was a woman Olivia had never seen before, tall, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a raincoat that looked far too pristine for the weather. "Mrs. Carson?" the woman called, shielding her eyes from the rain. "Olivia Carson?" "Yes," Olivia called back, instinctively moving to stand between the stranger and Emma. The woman approached, carrying an umbrella that immediately turned inside out in the wind. She abandoned it with a curse and continued toward them. "My name is Rebecca Miller. I'm with Greenfield Animal Control." She stopped a few feet away, her gaze moving from Olivia to Emma and finally to the dogs. Something flashed across her face. Recognition, then something harder to read. "I received a call about a possible animal abandonment at this address," she said, her voice carefully professional. Olivia frowned. "A call? From who? I just found them myself, not 5 minutes ago." Rebecca's eyes shifted to Emma, who was now sitting in the mud, both dogs' heads resting in her lap. "Is that your daughter?" "Yes, this is Emma." "Hello, Emma," Rebecca said, her tone softening slightly. "Those are some special friends you've got there." Emma nodded solemnly. "Luna's going to have her babies tonight. We need to get them inside where it's warm." Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. "Luna?" She looked at Olivia questioningly. "It's what Emma calls her. We just found them. I have no idea who they belong to or how long they've been here." Rebecca's mouth tightened into a thin line. "I do," she said grimly. She pulled out her phone, swiped through a few screens, and held it up for Olivia to see. "These two went missing from the Golden Creek shelter 3 days ago. We've been looking everywhere." On the screen was a photo of the same 2 German shepherds, looking healthier but unmistakably the same dogs. The caption read, "Stolen, Max and Luna, bonded pair. Luna pregnant, due any day. Reward for information." "Stolen?" Olivia repeated, confused. "But they're chained to my tree. Why would someone steal shelter dogs just to abandon them here?" Rebecca pocketed her phone, her expression darkening. "That's what I'd like to know." She looked around at the isolated property, the dark woods beyond. "Does anyone else live here with you and your daughter, Mrs. Carson?" "No," Olivia said, suddenly aware of how vulnerable they were, 2 females alone in a remote cottage. "My brother visits often. He's on his way now, actually." It was a lie, but something about the way Rebecca was looking at her made Olivia uneasy. "I see." Rebecca pulled a small tool from her pocket, a bolt cutter. "Let's get these chains off and get them somewhere dry. Then we can sort out the rest." As Rebecca moved toward the dogs, Max suddenly growled, his body tensing. Luna whimpered, pressing closer to Emma. "It's okay," Emma whispered to the dogs. "She's going to help you." Max continued to watch Rebecca warily, but allowed her to approach. With 2 sharp snaps, the chains fell away from their necks, revealing raw, infected skin beneath. "Those bastards," Rebecca muttered, then quickly added, "Sorry for the language. This just makes my blood boil." "Who would do this?" Olivia asked, helping Emma to her feet. The little girl was covered in mud from head to toe, but she didn't seem to notice or care. "That's the million-dollar question," Rebecca said, eyeing the padlock on the chain. "This isn't random. Someone went to a lot of trouble to steal these dogs and then chain them here, specifically." Another flash of lightning, another crash of thunder. Emma jumped, and both dogs moved closer to her, as if to protect her. "We need to get inside," Olivia said, suddenly aware of how cold she was, how cold Emma must be. Is it safe to bring them into the house?" Rebecca nodded. "They're good dogs. Max was a service animal before his owner passed away. Luna was a therapy dog. They ended up at the shelter together, and we couldn't bear to separate them." "They talked to me," Emma said matter-of-factly. already leading the dogs toward the cottage, her small hand resting on Luna's head. Rebecca gave Olivia a questioning look. "She has a vivid imagination," Olivia explained quickly. "She's been saying she heard them crying from inside the house. Somehow she knew they were chained up out here." "Smart kid," Rebecca said, but her expression suggested she was thinking something else entirely. As they reached the porch, Olivia's phone buzzed again. Jake's name flashed on the screen. "My brother," she explained to Rebecca before answering. "Jake, you won't believe what's happening here." "Liv," Jake's voice was tight with urgency. "Listen to me. Don't let anyone in the house. I just got a call from the Real Animal Control. They got an anonymous tip about dogs abandoned near your property, but they haven't been able to send anyone out because of the storm. They wanted to know if I could check since I live closer." Olivia froze, her blood turning to ice. She looked at Rebecca, who was helping Emma guide the dogs up the porch steps. "Jake," she whispered, turning away slightly, "there's a woman here. She says she's from Animal Control. She knew about the dogs. Liv, get inside and lock the doors, now. I'm 10 minutes away. The police are on their way too." The call ended abruptly. Olivia stared at her phone, then at Rebecca, who was now watching her with narrowed eyes. "Everything okay, Mrs. Carson?" Rebecca asked, her hand moving to the pocket of her raincoat. Olivia forced a smile. "Fine, just my brother checking in. He's caught in the storm, won't be able to make it after all." She needed to get Emma inside, away from this woman who was not who she claimed to be. But Emma was already in the doorway, the two dogs beside her, looking back expectantly. "Mommy, aren't you coming?" "Luna's getting really tired." Olivia moved toward the door, her mind racing. Who was this woman? What did she want with the dogs? With them? "After you," Rebecca said, gesturing for Olivia to go ahead. Olivia climbed the steps, every instinct screaming at her not to turn her back on the stranger. As she reached the top step, she heard a soft click behind her. She turned to see Rebecca pointing a small black object at her. Not a gun, but a taser. "I'm really sorry about this, Mrs. Carson," Rebecca said, her voice eerily calm. "But I'm going to need you to cooperate. Those dogs don't belong to the shelter. They belong to me." Emma screamed, clutching Luna's matted fur. The pregnant dog whimpered, but stood her ground beside the child. Max, despite his weakened state, moved to position himself between Rebecca and the others, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Please," Olivia said, raising her hands. "My daughter has nothing to do with this. Whatever you want, just—" The distinctive sound of tires on gravel cut through the storm. Headlights swept across the yard once more, illuminating Rebecca's startled face. "That'll be my brother," Olivia said, praying it was true. "And the police." Rebecca hesitated, the taser wavering in her grip. "You're lying." "Am I? Why don't you wait and find out?" For a moment, everything hung in balance. The storm, the dogs, the stranger with the weapon. Then Rebecca cursed, backing away. "This isn't over," she hissed, pocketing the taser. "Those dogs are valuable. More valuable than you know." Before Olivia could respond, Rebecca was sprinting through the rain toward her SUV. The engine roared to life, and the vehicle fishtailed down the driveway, disappearing into the darkness. Olivia grabbed Emma and pulled her inside the cottage, the dogs following close behind. She slammed the door, locked it, then dragged a heavy chair in front of it for good measure. "Mommy," Emma's small voice trembled. "Who was that bad lady?" "I don't know, baby." Olivia pulled Emma into a tight hug, feeling her daughter's heart racing against her own. "But she's gone now." "She'll come back," Emma whispered. "She wants Luna's babies." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Before she could question her daughter's statement, the sound of another car approaching made her tense. She peered through the curtains, relief flooding through her as she recognized Jake's old pickup truck. "It's Uncle Jake," she told Emma, who was now sitting on the floor between the two dogs. Max had collapsed from exhaustion, his head in Emma's lap, while Luna paced anxiously, her swollen belly heaving with each breath. Olivia unlocked the door to let Jake in. He burst into the cottage, soaking wet and wild-eyed. "Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you?" he demanded, scanning the room until his eyes landed on the dogs. "What the hell?" "We're fine," Olivia assured him, relocking the door. "A woman was here. She claimed to be from Animal Control, but then pulled a taser on me. She drove off when she heard you coming." Jake ran a hand through his dripping hair. Police should be right behind me, but with the storm, it might take them a while. Roads are flooded everywhere. He knelt beside Emma and the dogs. Hey, Munchkin, these your new friends? Emma nodded solemnly. This is Max and Luna. The bad lady wants to take Luna's babies away. They need our help. Jake looked at Olivia questioningly. She shook her head slightly, a signal that they'd talk later. Well, we won't let that happen, Jake promised, gently examining the raw rings around the dogs' necks where the chains had been. These poor things need a vet. I'll call Dr. Mitchell, Olivia said, reaching for her phone. She does house calls for emergencies. Luna suddenly let out a low moan, her legs splaying awkwardly as she tried to lie down. Something's wrong with her, Jake said, moving closer. Emma placed her small hand on Luna's heaving side. Her babies are coming, she announced, her voice unnaturally calm for a 5-year-old. She needs blankets, soft ones, and warm water. Olivia and Jake exchanged looks. How do you know? Jake began, but Olivia cut him off. Just do it, please. While Jake gathered blankets from the linen closet, Olivia filled a basin with warm water and grabbed every clean towel she could find. By the time they returned to the living room, Emma had somehow coaxed Luna into lying on her side, the dog's amber eyes fixed trustingly on the little girl. It hurts, Emma said, stroking Luna's head, but I told her we'll help. Emma, honey, Olivia began, setting down the basin of water. How do you know what Luna is feeling? Emma looked up at her mother, her expression startlingly adult. I can hear them in my head, not like talking, like feelings and pictures. Before Olivia could process this, Luna let out a keening whine, her body contracting visibly. It's starting, Emma said. She's scared. For the next hour, Olivia and Jake followed Emma's surprisingly precise instructions. The little girl seemed to know exactly what Luna needed, when to offer water, where to place comforting hands, how to help the laboring dog through each contraction. Max never left Luna's side, occasionally licking her face or letting out soft whines that Emma would answer as if they were having a conversation. The first puppy arrived just as the storm reached its peak, a tiny black bundle that Luna immediately began cleaning with her tongue. A boy, Emma announced. His name is Storm. The second and third puppies followed quickly, both females with German Shepherd markings. Willow and Sky, Emma said, helping Luna clean them. Olivia watched in amazement as her daughter, her kindergartner, who still needed help tying her shoes, confidently guided a dog through labor, naming each puppy as if she'd known them all along. The fourth puppy was smaller than the others, with a white blaze on its chest. Luna seemed to struggle more with this birth, and when the puppy finally emerged, it lay still and silent. He's not breathing, Jake said, his voice tight. Luna whined anxiously, trying to reach the motionless puppy, but it was Max who moved first, gently nudging the tiny body with his nose, then beginning to lick it with focused intensity. He's helping, Emma whispered. Uncle Jake, rub the puppy with a towel, like this. She demonstrated a gentle circular motion. Jake followed her lead, and after what seemed like an eternity, the tiny puppy gave a shuddering gasp and let out a squeaky cry. Hero, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. His name is Hero because he fought to stay with us. Olivia found herself crying too, though she couldn't have explained why. There was something happening here beyond her understanding, something in the way her daughter connected with these animals, in the way both dogs trusted her implicitly despite their obvious mistreatment. The fifth and sixth puppies arrived without complication, another male and female that Emma immediately named Ranger and Star. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to ease, the wind dying down to a whisper. Inside, a different kind of miracle had taken place. A family formed in the most unexpected way. Luna curled around her 6 puppies, exhaustion evident in every line of her body, but a newfound peace in her eyes. Max settled beside her, his massive head resting protectively near the nursing puppies. They're so beautiful, Emma whispered, her small body finally showing signs of fatigue as she leaned against Jake's shoulder. You were amazing, kiddo, Jake told her, his voice rough with emotion. Where did you learn to do all that? Emma yawned. Luna showed me, in my head. Jake looked at Olivia, who shrugged helplessly. There was no logical explanation for what they had witnessed tonight. A knock at the door made them all jump. Max was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between the door and his family. "Police," a voice called. "Mrs. Carson, we received a report of an intruder." Olivia moved the chair and opened the door to find two officers standing on her porch, rain dripping from their uniform hats. "Sorry for the delay, ma'am," the older officer said. "Roads are a mess. You folks okay in here?" "We're fine now," Olivia said, stepping back to reveal the scene in her living room. Two exhausted dogs, 6 newborn puppies, a mud-covered child, and Jake sitting cross-legged on the floor surrounded by bloody towels. The officer's eyebrows shot up simultaneously. "It's been an eventful evening," Jake explained dryly. The younger officer crouched down to get a better look at the dogs. "These the ones that were reported abandoned?" Olivia nodded. "Chained to the oak tree out there, but there's more to it. A woman showed up claiming to be from animal control, but when my brother was on his way, she pulled a taser on me and then fled." The officers exchanged glances. "Can you describe this woman?" As Olivia provided details, the older officer took notes while the younger one snapped photos of the dog's neck wounds. "Those chains were secured with a padlock," Olivia added. "This was deliberate, and the woman, Rebecca, she called herself, she said the dogs belonged to her, that they were valuable." "Puppy mill, maybe?" the younger officer suggested to his partner. "Breeding dogs stolen for their bloodline?" "Could be. Mrs. Carson, we'll need formal statements from both you and your brother, and we'll contact actual animal control to come check on these dogs." Emma, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "You can't take them away. They chose us." The officers looked at the little girl with kind but patronizing smiles. "Well, sweetheart," the older one began, "there are rules about these things. We need to make sure these dogs are properly cared for, and—" "I just delivered 6 puppies," Emma interrupted, her small voice surprisingly firm. "I know how to take care of them." Luna, as if understanding the conversation, pulled herself to her feet, wobbling slightly. She limped over to Emma and pressed against the child's side, her eyes never leaving the officers. The younger officer cleared his throat. "We'll make a note of the family's attachment in our report." He knelt to Emma's level. "What's your name, young lady?" "Emma Carson. I'm 5 3/4. "Well, Emma Carson, I've never seen a dog trust a human like that after being abused. You must have a special gift." Emma nodded seriously. "I can hear them, not like talking, like feelings and pictures." The officer smiled, clearly not taking her literally. "That's called empathy. And it's a superpower." A flash of headlights through the window signaled another arrival. This time, it was a woman in her 50s carrying a veterinary bag. "That's Dr. Mitchell," Olivia explained to the officers. "I called her about the dogs." Dr. Mitchell bustled in, shaking rain from her coat. "Olivia, Jake, what on earth is—" She stopped short at the sight of the dogs and puppies. "My goodness. Can you check them over?" Olivia asked. "They've been through a lot." While the vet examined the dogs and the officers continued taking statements, Emma curled up beside Luna and the puppies, her eyelids growing heavy. "You should get some rest, Munchkin," Jake told her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Can't," Emma murmured. "Have to protect them." "From what, honey?" "Bad people are coming," Emma whispered, her voice slurring with exhaustion. "The lady said it's not over." Jake looked at Olivia, concern etched on his face. Before they could discuss it further, Dr. Mitchell approached with her findings. "Both adults are severely dehydrated and malnourished," she reported. "The neck wounds are infected but treatable. Luna's remarkably healthy considering she just whelped 6 puppies in these conditions. They're fighters, all of them." "Will they be okay?" Olivia asked. "With proper care, yes. But there's something else you should know." Dr. Mitchell pulled a small electronic device from her bag. "I scanned them for microchips. Most strays don't have them, but I always check just in case." She ran the scanner over Max's shoulder. A sharp beep confirmed the presence of a chip. "He's registered," Dr. Mitchell confirmed, checking the readout, "to a Mr. Victor Kent of Westlake Hills." "Westlake Hills?" Jake repeated. "That's the richest neighborhood in the county." Dr. Mitchell nodded. "Luna's chipped too. Same owner." The officers immediately took note of this information. "We'll contact Mr. Kent right away," the older one said. "If these are his dogs, he'll want to know they've been found." A cold weight settled in Olivia's stomach as she looked at Emma, now fast asleep among the dogs who had so quickly become part of their family. How would she explain to her daughter that these animals might belong to someone else? As if sensing her thoughts, Max raised his head and met her gaze. There was intelligence in those amber eyes, a silent communication that Olivia couldn't quite decipher, but somehow understood anyway. These dogs didn't want to go back to their registered owner. "It's getting late," Jake said, noticing Olivia's troubled expression. "Maybe the rest of this can wait until morning. Emma's exhausted, and so are the dogs." The officers agreed to return the following day, and Dr. Mitchell left them with antibiotics and wound care instructions. Soon the cottage was quiet except for the soft breathing of sleeping puppies and the occasional creak of the house settling after the storm. Olivia sat on the couch, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, as she watched over the unlikely family assembled on her living room floor. "What are we going to do?" she whispered to Jake, who sat beside her. "If this Victor Kent comes to claim them?" "One problem at a time, Liv," Jake advised. "First, we make sure they're healthy. Then we figure out why someone would steal dogs from a wealthy owner, only to chain them up and abandon them in a storm. And somewhere in there, we should probably talk about how your 5-year-old daughter apparently speaks dog." Olivia managed a weak smile. "You believe her, then? That she can communicate with them somehow?" Jake glanced at Emma, peacefully asleep with her arm draped over Luna's neck. The puppies nestled between them. "After what I saw tonight? Yeah, I do. She knew things, Liv. Things she couldn't possibly have known." A soft knock at the door startled them both. Jake was instantly on his feet, moving protectively toward Emma and the dogs. "Who could that be at this hour?" Olivia whispered, checking her watch. It was past midnight. "Stay here," Jake ordered, approaching the door cautiously. He peered through the peephole, then stepped back in surprise. "It's a guy in a suit, driving a black Mercedes." Olivia's heartbeat quickened. Victor Kent? Only one way to find out. Jake opened the door a crack, chain still in place. "Can I help you?" The man outside was tall and impeccably dressed despite the late hour and lingering rain. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his expression coldly professional. "Good evening," he said, his voice cultured and precise. "I'm Gregory Wells, attorney for Mr. Victor Kent. I understand you found something that belongs to my client." "At 1 a.m, Jake challenged. "Most lawyers I know keep office hours." The attorney's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Kent pays for round-the-clock service. The police contacted him about his missing dogs, and he sent me immediately to retrieve them." "The dogs need rest," Olivia said, joining Jake at the door. "They've been through an ordeal. One just gave birth to 6 puppies." "All the more reason to get them back to proper care facilities," Wells replied smoothly. "Mr. Kent has a state-of-the-art kennel on his estate and a private veterinarian on staff." Something about the man's demeanor set off warning bells in Olivia's mind. "I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable releasing them in the middle of the night without proper documentation. The police are coming back tomorrow. You can sort it out with them then." Wells's pleasant expression hardened. "Mrs. Carson, I don't think you understand. Those animals are extremely valuable property. Mr. Kent has been searching for them since they were stolen. He's prepared to be generous to those who assist in their return, and less forgiving to those who obstruct it." "Is that a threat?" Jake demanded. "Merely a statement of fact. My client is a powerful man in this county." Wells reached into his pocket and extracted a business card. "Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. Mr. Kent will even provide a reward for the safe return of his property." Jake took the card but made no move to unchain the door. "We'll discuss it with the police tomorrow. Good night." He closed the door firmly in the attorney's face. Through the window they watched as Wells returned to his Mercedes, speaking into a cell phone as he drove away. "I don't like this," Olivia murmured. "Why would a rich man's lawyer show up in the middle of the night for dogs that have already been found safe? Why not wait until morning?" "Because something's not right," Jake agreed. "Did you notice he called them property, not pets? And he knew about the puppies but didn't seem surprised or concerned about their condition." A quiet voice spoke from behind them. "He's a bad man too." They turned to find Emma sitting up, her eyes wide and alert despite the late hour. "The dogs told you that?" Olivia asked, no longer questioning her daughter's claims. Emma nodded. "Max says his real name isn't Victor. It's Vincent Adler, and he hurts dogs to make money." Jake and Olivia exchanged alarmed glances. "Emma, honey," Olivia said carefully, "how would Max know the man's real name?" "Because," Emma explained with the simple logic of a child. That's what the bad people called him when they took Max and Luna away. They said Mr. Adler would pay them a lot of money for special dogs that could have special puppies. Jake pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police back. Right now. But as he dialed, the lights in the cottage suddenly went out, plunging them into darkness. Outside, the distant rumble of a generator could be heard, then silence. Power's out again, Jake muttered, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the room. Olivia felt her way to the kitchen drawer, where she kept emergency candles. As she fumbled in the dark, she glanced out the window and froze. At the edge of the property where the yard met the woods, a figure stood watching the house, then another and another. "Jake," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've got company." Was Vincent Adler behind the mysterious power outage? What did he want with these dogs that made them so valuable? All Emma knew was that they had to protect Luna's puppies at all costs. Would you risk everything to save a dog and her newborn puppies? Tell us what you would have done in Emma's place. "Get away from the windows," Jake whispered, pulling Olivia back from the glass. "We don't know who those people are." "They're the bad people," Emma said, now fully awake and pressing herself against Luna's side. "They want to take the puppies." Max had risen to his feet, his hackles raised as he stared at the door, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Despite his weakened state, the dog's protective instinct was unmistakable. "We need to call the police again," Olivia said, fumbling for her phone. Jake checked his own phone, cursing under his breath. No signal. They must have a jammer or something. "That's not legal," Olivia whispered, panic rising in her throat. "Neither is stealing dogs or threatening people with tasers," Jake replied grimly. "I don't think these folks are too concerned with what's legal." A beam of light swept across the front windows, a flashlight, moving closer to the house. "Uncle Jake," Emma whispered, her voice trembling but determined. "Max says there's a way out through the back, through the woods." Jake and Olivia exchanged glances in the dim light of Jake's phone flashlight. "Emma, honey," Olivia began gently, "how would Max know about—" "He can smell it," Emma interrupted. "And he remembers. They brought him and Luna through the woods when they chained them up." Jake made a quick decision. "We need to get out of here. These people aren't here for a friendly chat, and we can't fight them off." "But the puppies," Olivia protested. "They're newborn. We can't take them out in this weather." Jake was already moving toward the kitchen, grabbing his backpack that he had dropped by the door earlier. He emptied its contents onto the counter and returned to the living room. "We'll put them in here," he said, holding open the backpack. "It'll keep them warm and together." Olivia looked at the tiny, helpless puppies nursing at Luna's side. "They need their mother." "And they'll have her," Jake assured her. "But we need to move, now." A sound at the front door made them all freeze, the soft scratching of metal against metal. Someone was trying to pick the lock. "Mommy," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared." "It's okay, baby," Olivia said, gathering her courage. "We're going to be okay." With gentle hands, they transferred the squeaking puppies into Jake's backpack, lining it with a soft blanket. Luna watched anxiously but didn't interfere, seeming to understand the urgency of their situation. "Good girl," Jake murmured, zipping the backpack halfway to give the puppies air while keeping them secure. "You're going to have to follow us, okay? We'll protect your babies." To Olivia's amazement, the dog seemed to nod in understanding. "Emma, put on your raincoat and boots," Olivia instructed, helping her daughter into her gear while Jake carefully shouldered the backpack full of puppies. Another sound from the front door, more insistent this time. The lock was giving way. "Out the back," Jake whispered, leading them toward the kitchen and the rear door. "Stay quiet." They slipped out into the damp night, the rain now reduced to a light drizzle. The woods behind the cottage loomed dark and intimidating, but Max took the lead without hesitation, moving with surprising strength for a dog that had been chained and starving just hours earlier. Luna stayed close to Jake, her eyes never leaving the backpack that contained her puppies. Emma held tightly to Olivia's hand as they followed the dogs into the trees, away from the lights now visible around the front of the cottage. They had barely made it 20 yards into the woods when they heard the crash of the front door being forced open. "Hurry!" Jake urged, picking Emma up with his free arm. They moved deeper into the forest, guided only by the dim light of Jake's phone and the uncanny confidence of Max, who seemed to know exactly where he was going. The ground was slick with mud and fallen leaves, making each step treacherous. Behind them, shouting erupted from the cottage. Their absence had been discovered. "Find them!" a voice commanded. "They can't have gone far with those dogs and puppies!" Flashlight beams began to pierce the darkness, sweeping across the edge of the woods. "Max," Emma whispered, leaning down from Jake's arms to address the dog. "We need to hide." The German Shepherd veered off the faint path they had been following, leading them down a shallow ravine and toward a dense thicket of undergrowth. Luna followed, and the humans had little choice but to trust the animal's instincts. The thicket concealed a small hollow beneath a fallen tree, its interior relatively dry despite the recent downpour. Max paused at the entrance, looking back at them expectantly. "In there?" Jake asked skeptically. It seemed barely large enough for the dogs, let alone 2 adults and a child. Emma nodded. "Max says it's safe. The bad people won't find us." Too exhausted and frightened to question the child's strange connection with the dogs, Jake and Olivia crawled into the hollow, pulling Emma in after them. The dogs followed, somehow managing to fit themselves into the cramped space. Jake carefully opened the backpack, allowing Luna to check on her puppies, which were surprisingly quiet given their ordeal. "Now what?" Olivia whispered, holding Emma close as they huddled in their hiding place. Jake checked his phone again. "Still no signal. We wait until it's safe, then make our way to the main road. It's maybe 2 miles through these woods if I'm oriented right." 2 miles? Olivia repeated, thinking of Emma's little legs, of Luna's exhausted body fresh from giving birth, of the tiny puppies who needed warmth and constant nursing. "We'll manage," Jake assured her, though his voice lacked conviction. Flashlight beams swept the woods around them, accompanied by the sounds of men crashing through the underbrush. They seemed to be spreading out in a search pattern, methodically covering the area around the cottage. "They really want these dogs," Jake murmured. "Why? What makes them so special?" Emma, her small face eerily calm in the darkness, spoke with the certainty of someone much older. "Luna's puppies are different. Special. That's why the bad man wants them." "Different how, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, stroking her daughter's hair. "They can do what I can do," Emma said simply. "They can hear people's feelings, in their heads. Mr. Adler wants to sell them to people who will use them to do bad things." Jake and Olivia exchanged worried glances. Was this just a child's imagination, constructing a narrative to make sense of a frightening situation? Or was there something more to Emma's inexplicable bond with these animals? A flashlight beam passed directly over their hiding place. They held their breath, but the light moved on. Max had chosen well. The hollow was nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Minutes stretched into an hour as they huddled in silence, listening to the search gradually move farther away. The puppies suckled quietly at Luna's side, while Max kept watch at the entrance to their shelter, his ears pricked for any sound of danger. "I think they're gone," Jake finally whispered, peering out into the darkness. "We should move while we have the chance." But as he spoke, the sound of a vehicle's engine rumbled somewhere nearby, far closer than the road should be. "There must be a fire road or logging trail through these woods," Jake realized. "They're trying to cut us off." Olivia felt despair washing over her. How could they outrun vehicles? How could they evade professional trackers who clearly knew these woods, and all for dogs they'd only just met? She looked down at Emma, expecting to see fear on her daughter's face. Instead, she found determination. "Max knows another way," Emma whispered, her hand resting on the big dog's head. "Through the water." "Water?" Jake repeated. "There's a creek," Emma explained. "If we walk in it, they can't follow our smell. Max says it leads to a place where we can be safe." Again, that inexplicable knowledge. But what choice did they have? "Lead the way," Jake told Max, adjusting the backpack of puppies. They crawled from their hiding place and followed Max deeper into the woods, moving as quietly as possible over the wet ground. After about 15 minutes of careful progress, they heard the soft gurgle of flowing water. The creek was shallow but wide, its current gentle after the storm. Max stepped into it without hesitation, water reaching halfway up his legs. Luna followed, though she kept glancing back at the backpack containing her puppies. "Smart dogs," Jake murmured. "Water will mask our scent trail." They waded into the cold creek, gasping as the water soaked their shoes and pant legs. Emma whimpered at the chill but didn't complain as Olivia carried her, trying to keep her as dry as possible. For what seemed like hours, they followed the creek, sometimes walking in the water, sometimes along its muddy banks when the current grew too strong. The night grew colder, and exhaustion weighed heavily on all of them. Even Max began to show signs of fatigue, his pace slowing, his head hanging lower. Just when Olivia thought they couldn't go any further, the creek widened into a small pond, and beyond it, barely visible in the darkness, stood a structure of some kind. "What is that?" she whispered to Jake. "Looks like an old hunting cabin," he replied, squinting into the darkness. "Probably abandoned." Max didn't hesitate, leading them straight toward the cabin. Luna followed, her trust in the other dog absolute. The cabin was indeed abandoned, its windows dark and one corner of the roof partially collapsed. But it was shelter, a place to rest and regroup. Jake tested the old wooden door, which swung open with a creak of rusted hinges. He swept his phone light around the interior, revealing a single room with a dilapidated cot, a small pot-bellied stove, and a rough wooden table. Dust and cobwebs covered everything, but it was dry and, most importantly, hidden. "We can rest here," Jake said, setting down the backpack and gently removing the puppies. They were all still alive, squirming and squeaking, as Luna immediately began to clean and nurse them. Max did a circuit of the small cabin, sniffing at every corner before finally settling near the door, his position clearly one of guard duty. "Good boy," Olivia told him, sinking onto the floor beside Emma, who was already curling up next to Luna and her puppies. Jake found some old blankets in a trunk, shaking off the dust before wrapping them around Olivia and Emma. "Try to get some sleep," he suggested. "I'll keep watch with Max." But exhaustion soon claimed him too, and the strange family, humans and dogs alike, slept fitfully as the night deepened around the isolated cabin. Emma woke first, the early morning light filtering through the dirty windows. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was or why. Then she felt Luna's warm body beside her, heard the tiny sounds of the puppies, and it all came rushing back. "Mommy," she whispered, shaking Olivia gently. "Mommy, wake up." Olivia opened her eyes, immediately alert. "What is it? Are you okay?" "Max says someone's coming," Emma said, her voice surprisingly calm. "But it's not the bad people. It's a friend." As if to confirm her words, Max wasn't growling or showing any signs of alarm, though he was standing attentively by the door, ears pricked forward. Jake was instantly awake, moving to the cabin's single window. "I don't see anyone," he said, peering through the grimy glass. A moment later, there was a soft knock at the door. Not the aggressive pounding of a threat, but the gentle tap of someone who didn't want to frighten the cabin's occupants. "Hello?" a woman's voice called softly. "Is anyone in there? I'm not going to hurt you." Jake positioned himself protectively in front of Olivia and Emma. "Who are you?" "My name is Sarah Winters. I'm a veterinarian. I've been tracking those dogs since they were stolen from the shelter 3 days ago." Olivia and Jake exchanged puzzled glances. "The shelter?" Jake repeated. "But they're microchipped to someone named Victor Kent." "That's what the chips say now," the woman replied. "But they've been tampered with. Those dogs don't belong to Kent, or Adler, which is his real name. They were in my care at the Golden Creek Animal Sanctuary. Please, I can explain everything, but we need to move quickly. Adler's men are still searching the woods." Max made a soft whining sound, moving closer to the door rather than backing away. It seemed like an endorsement. "Emma?" Olivia looked at her daughter questioningly. Emma nodded. "She's telling the truth. Max remembers her. She gave him treats and helped Luna when she was sick." Jake hesitated, then opened the door a crack. A woman in her 30s with short brown hair and kind eyes stood outside, dressed in hiking gear and carrying a backpack. When she saw Max, her face lit up with relief. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. "You're alive, both of you." Her eyes moved to the puppies nestled against Luna's side. "And the babies too. I was so worried." Max moved forward, tail wagging as he greeted the newcomer. It was the first time they'd seen him behave like a normal, happy dog rather than a wary survivor. "You'd better come in," Jake said, opening the door wider. Sarah stepped into the cabin, immediately kneeling to examine Luna and the puppies with gentle, professional hands. "They look good, considering everything they've been through," she assessed. "Luna's a fighter." "So is Emma," Olivia said, putting an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "She helped deliver the puppies. She seems to have a special connection with the dogs." Sarah looked up sharply, her eyes focusing on Emma with newfound interest. A connection? What kind of connection? She says she can hear their thoughts, Jake explained, still sounding skeptical despite everything he'd witnessed. Not words exactly, but feelings and images. She knew things about these dogs that she couldn't possibly have known. Sarah sat back on her heels, her expression serious. "That's why Adler wants them," she said softly. "That's why he stole them from the sanctuary." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked. Sarah gestured for them all to sit. "This is going to sound crazy, but I need you to hear me out." As they settled on the dusty cabin floor, Sarah began her explanation. Luna and Max aren't ordinary dogs. They're part of a breeding program that started decades ago in Eastern Europe. The program was trying to develop dogs with enhanced empathic abilities, animals that could form unusually strong bonds with humans, particularly those with certain neurological differences. "Like me?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. Sarah nodded. "Children with your kind of sensitivity were especially compatible with these dogs. The program was originally meant to create service animals for people with autism, PTSD, and other conditions where emotional regulation is challenging. The dogs could sense emotional states and respond accordingly, helping their humans navigate difficult situations." "That doesn't sound sinister," Jake observed. "Why all this cloak and dagger stuff?" "Because Adler discovered that these dogs, paired with the right handlers, could do more than provide emotional support," Sarah continued grimly. "They could be used for intelligence gathering, corporate espionage, even psychological manipulation. A child who can receive emotional impressions from the dogs could, theoretically, help the dogs pick up emotional states from targets. It's like having a living lie detector that can sense not just deception, but fear, aggression, vulnerability, all things that could be exploited." "That's horrible," Olivia whispered, pulling Emma closer. "They're using children and dogs as weapons?" "Adler is trying to. He's been buying up dogs from this bloodline wherever he can find them. Luna and Max were two of the last ones I knew of who hadn't fallen into his hands. I've been protecting them at the sanctuary under false identities, but somehow he found out." "And the puppies?" Jake asked, looking at the 6 tiny bundles now sleeping peacefully at Luna's side. "Pure genetic gold to someone like Adler," Sarah said bitterly. "Born to 2 dogs with confirmed abilities, they'll likely inherit the same traits. He could sell them for hundreds of thousands each to the right buyers." "People would pay that much for puppies?" Olivia asked incredulously. "People pay that much for advantage," Sarah corrected. "Military contracts, corporate security, intelligence agencies. There's no shortage of entities who would value dogs that can sense emotional states with such precision, especially if they could be paired with handlers who can interpret those impressions." "Handlers like Emma," Jake said, his voice hardening. "Is that why Adler was so interested in us? He thinks Emma could be one of these handlers?" Sarah nodded solemnly. "The fact that she connected so strongly with Max and Luna, that she could interpret their needs and emotions so accurately, it would be extremely valuable to someone like Adler." Emma had been listening quietly, one hand resting on Luna's head. "The puppies are scared," she said suddenly. "They can feel that we're scared too." "They're very sensitive to emotional states, even this young," Sarah confirmed. "It's part of what makes them special." "How did you find us?" Jake asked, the practical question cutting through the fantastic revelations. "I've been tracking Adler's operation for months," Sarah explained. "When the dogs disappeared from the sanctuary, I knew it was him. I've been following his men through the woods all night. When they started talking about a little girl who could talk to the dogs, I knew I had to find you first." "So what now?" Olivia asked, looking around at their strange group. 2 exhausted adults, a 5-year-old child, 2 weakened dogs, and 6 vulnerable puppies, all hiding in a dilapidated cabin in the woods. "Now we get you all to safety," Sarah said, opening her backpack to reveal energy bars, water bottles, and a satellite phone. "I have a colleague waiting with a van about a mile from here. We can take you to the sanctuary's secure facility. Adler won't be able to reach you there." "And then what?" Jake pressed. "We just hide forever? From a man powerful enough to falsify microchip records and send armed men into the woods after dogs?" Sarah's expression hardened. "No. Then we expose him. I've been gathering evidence of his operation for years. The illegal breeding, the animal abuse, the exploitation of children. I just needed proof of his direct involvement, something concrete to take to the authorities. Like the chips in Max and Luna that he tampered with? Olivia suggested. Exactly like that, Sarah confirmed. Plus testimony from you about the woman who claimed to be from animal control, the lawyer who showed up in the middle of the night, and the armed men who broke into your home. A sudden bark from Max silenced their conversation. The dog was on his feet, hackles raised, staring at the cabin door. "They've found us?" Sarah whispered, immediately moving to gather up the puppies. "We need to go, now." Outside, the sound of vehicles approaching shattered the morning quiet. Dogs barked in the distance, tracking dogs, following their scent to the cabin. "There's a back way," Sarah said, pointing to a small window on the far side of the cabin. "Through the marsh. The water and mud will mask our scent." As they hurriedly prepared to flee once more, Emma knelt beside Max, her small arms encircling his powerful neck. "We'll protect you," she promised, "just like you protected us." The big dog licked her face once, then turned toward the door, his stance making his intentions clear. "No!" Emma cried, realizing what he meant to do. "You can't stay behind. They'll hurt you." "He's buying us time," Sarah said softly, understanding the dog's plan. "He knows Luna and the puppies can't move fast enough to escape unless someone distracts the trackers." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she clutched at Max's fur. "Please don't," she begged. "We need you." Olivia felt her own eyes filling with tears as she watched her daughter pleading with a dog who seemed determined to sacrifice himself for his family. Jake checked the window, his expression grim. "They're getting closer. We need to decide now." Could they escape with all the dogs? Or would they have to accept Max's brave sacrifice? The answer seemed impossible as the sounds of their pursuers grew ever closer. If you were Emma, what would you say to Max in this moment? Would you let him stay behind to protect his family? Time seemed to freeze as they stood in that dusty cabin, the sounds of their pursuers growing closer with each passing second. Emma's small face was streaked with tears as she held on to Max, her fingers buried in his thick fur. "No," she said finally, her voice no longer that of a frightened child, but filled with a determination that startled the adults. "We all go together. No one gets left behind." "Emma, sweetheart," Sarah began gently, "sometimes—" "No," Emma's voice rose, her eyes flashing. "Max says there's another way. We just have to trust him." Before anyone could question her, Emma was fumbling with the latch on the cabin's back door. It swung open to reveal a narrow path leading into a dense patch of marsh grasses and cattails. Without hesitation, Max bounded through the door, then turned to look back at them expectantly. "He wants us to follow him," Emma explained, already stepping outside. Jake quickly gathered up 3 of the puppies, placing them carefully in the backpack, while Olivia took the other 3. Sarah helped Luna to her feet, supporting the exhausted mother dog. "Stay close together," Sarah instructed as they followed Max into the marsh. "Step exactly where I step. The ground is treacherous here." The marsh was a maze of water channels and muddy islands, the tall grasses providing cover, but making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Max moved with surprising confidence, choosing a path that seemed almost invisible to human eyes. Behind them, they could hear shouting as their pursuers discovered the abandoned cabin. Dogs barked excitedly, but the sounds became confused and frustrated as the scent trail disappeared into the waterlogged marsh. "The water's breaking up our scent," Sarah whispered, a note of hope in her voice. "And these marshes are nearly impossible to navigate without knowing the safe paths." "How does Max know the way?" Jake asked, carefully balancing the backpack of puppies as he stepped from one muddy hummock to another. Sarah shook her head in wonder. "I have no idea. These dogs continue to surprise me." They moved deeper into the marsh, the morning sun now filtering through the mist that rose from the warm water. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter, then disappeared entirely. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, Max led them to a small rise of dry land, where a dirt road was visible through the trees. "My colleague should be waiting just up that road," Sarah said, checking her watch. "If we hurry, we can be at the sanctuary by noon." As they emerged from the marsh onto the dirt road, exhausted but hopeful, the rumble of an engine made them freeze. A black SUV crested the hill ahead, moving slowly as if searching for something, or someone. "Quick, back into the marsh," Jake urged. but it was too late. The SUV had spotted them and was accelerating in their direction. Emma clutched Luna protectively while Max positioned himself in front of the group, a deep growl rumbling in his chest. Sarah stepped forward, reaching into her backpack. "Stay behind me," she ordered, withdrawing what appeared to be a small canister. The SUV skidded to a stop 20 feet away, and the driver's door flew open. A woman jumped out, her face lighting up with relief when she saw them. "Sarah, thank God," she called, jogging toward them. "I've been driving these roads for hours looking for you." Sarah lowered the canister, her shoulders sagging in relief. "Megan, you found us?" The newcomer, a tall woman with her hair tied back in a practical ponytail, quickly assessed the situation. "These the ones you called about? The family with the dogs?" Sarah nodded. "This is Olivia, Jake, and Emma. And of course, Max, Luna, and the puppies." Megan approached cautiously, respecting Max's protective stance. "Hey there, big guy. Remember me? I helped take care of you at the sanctuary." To everyone's surprise, Max's demeanor immediately changed. His tail began to wag, and he moved forward to greet Megan like an old friend. "He remembers you," Emma said, smiling through her exhaustion. "Of course he does," Megan replied, kneeling to scratch behind Max's ears. "We were buddies, Luna too, though she was always a bit more shy." She glanced at the backpacks. "Are those the puppies?" "All of them made it." "All 6, Olivia confirmed. "Thanks to Emma." Megan's eyebrows rose. "You must be the little girl Sarah mentioned, the one with the special connection." Emma nodded solemnly. "I can hear them. In my head." "Well, then you must be very special indeed," Megan said, rising to her feet. "Let's get you all to safety. The sanctuary isn't far, but we should hurry. Adler's men know these woods too." They piled into the SUV, adults, child, dogs, and puppies all crowded together in a strange but oddly cohesive unit. As Megan drove, expertly navigating the rugged dirt roads, Sarah used her satellite phone to call ahead to the sanctuary. "We'll need medical supplies ready," she instructed whoever was on the other end. "Dog nutrition formulas, blankets, and, yes, the secure building. No, don't tell anyone we're coming, not even staff. Just Daniel and yourself." She ended the call, turning to explain. "We can't be too careful. Adler has informants everywhere." "What exactly is this sanctuary?" Olivia asked, cradling Emma, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and fallen asleep against her side. "Golden Creek started as a regular animal shelter," Sarah explained. "But over the years, it's evolved. We specialize in rehabilitating animals with special needs or unusual backgrounds. Some from research facilities, some from fighting rings, some from situations like Max and Luna's." "And you knew about their abilities?" Jake asked. Sarah nodded. "I used to work for a research group studying canine cognition. When I discovered what some of my colleagues were really doing, using these empathically gifted dogs for questionable purposes, I left and started rescuing the dogs. Max and Luna were among the first I saved." "From Adler?" Olivia